difficulties was much as Osrith remembered. The short grass before the monastery was almost exactly as she remembered when she had fled from the father of the family she had been given, who had tried to steal Fed a sword. While she researched, she planned, deciding when she could get discreetly across to the village for the lily root or Danzioru. For, it was certain, Osrith deduced, from her lack of monthly blood, and her enlarged, tender breasts, her nipples seeping pale milky fluid which soaked through her bindings and down her stomach, that she was pregnant. And, she was not prepared to be Ayla, kitchen servant at Doyatum Almuia, birthed by the wise Mary, soon to be Constantine's wife, not prepared to support a bastard child of a prince, in Ayla's case, Domnall, with no prospect of warfare and little prospect of a life for the child, either. Stay away from Constantine, Bach had warned her. In the meantime, her heart soared when she chanced on correspondence from Father Becker. It was telling his colleagues here in Alba that, while Wessex was secure, it had been secured by the Danelaw, introduced to keep Wessex and part of Mercia safe. It could so easily have happened to that could easily have happened to Alba, had Domnall lost. Ancient kingdoms would have resorted to local warriors, called from the fields to fight the Norse, and there would have been widespread slaughter. At least now, the lords could send their sons for training at Dunnottar, and modern warfare skills could be taught and disseminated around Domnall's country. Fragmented, Alba could easily have been overrun and annexed, as the Anglish and Saxon kingdoms had. Osrith read on. King Alfred's daughter Ethelfled, a princess of 14, had been betrothed to a lord, Ethelred of Mercia. Committed this all to memory before she left, names distant to her, lands far. But, they were the life of her brother. And, Osrith needn't imagine it, either, for Becker had confided that Utard, displaced Lord of Bibbenberg, had married and living in Winchester. That he had passed over his first wife, who had gone to a nunnery, following the death of their son, also Utard. Osrith had read that, twice, her heart quickening. Her brother had a whole life, while she had fled Bibbenberg. And, Becker was with him. A stab of pain crossed her chest, a longing to be with him, ancient thoughts of fleeing to be by his side. As she crossed over the Forth as dawn filtered through dense clouds and thick fog the day after Candlemas, her mind was on Utard and she imagined his life, as lord to Alfred. Was he his loyal Christian warrior, pledging his northern home to ally with the king? Was he Alfred's general, and planned his strategies in battle? The village had changed since Osrith had last been there. A huge, black hole stood out in the fog, where the church had been. Next to it, work had begun on its replacement, and even now, so early in the morning, monks were supervising servants with horses through Tby trees with wood, piling it next to Tby foundation outline of Tby building. Osrith strode hurriedly towards the east of the village, past wooden cottages where their occupants were beginning their day by hanging out their bedding and feeding their animals, to where the heathen quarter was. When she was there before, many trees sheltered around the tiny homes, and here, in Tby cold of the keen morning, some of Tby inhabitants were cooking. Apart from some children, scurrying out of her way as she trod on the mud, Osrith was mostly ignored. Where would the heathen healer be? The people here spoke only Cymric, and she began by crossing to the building which Osrith thought she had been to before. It had been by chance she had met Bach, at 12, who sold curatives, and counselled her, while Osrith was trying to bathe discreetly in the Moray. The river was not the same as the sea, Bach had told her. The river was fresh and life-giving. To try the water again would try her strength, and she was strong and should not fear. Osrith felt better after that had returned to Bach when she awoke one morning covered in blood with no wound visible. The woman had smiled and told her to bathe in Tby River before giving her strips of cloth to wear in her breeches. You are becoming a woman, it's a sign your body can bear a child. She had smiled, and had pushed away the shard of silver Osrith had known enough to bring with her to pay the heathen woman. Now, outside the house Osrith was sure was Bach's, a young woman stood, lighting a fire with 2 strike stones. Bach was my mother, the young woman told her tersely, in Cymric. She died? Osrith asked. In the fire, in the church. She watched Bach's daughter, who was called Sula, pour water into a large pot, which she then hung above the fire. I am sorry. I am not. Sula folded her arms. She was black-haired, brown-eyed, dainty-looking but clearly hardy. The king thought she was a witch, and was going to burn her. Burning is what happens to witches in Alba, his servant told us. Ha! She looked through the mist towards where the church had stood, and where the new one was growing. So she swore to be a Christian, and gave up our old ways. Then, when the Norse came, died in flame, anyway. Does your God have a sense of humor? I believe he has a way of making things happen for a reason only he knows, Osrith replied, wryly. And then, got down to business. Tansy, she needed, and lily root. Root and flower. And you know what to do with these? Sulu eyed her with suspicion. Yes, Osrith nodded, as she grasped the silver from her jerkin folds, holding it her cupped hand, so only she could see. I'll make some it up for you, Sula said, collecting the silver in her own hands and beckoned Osrith into her earth-floored, dimly lit cottage, deftly flitting from casket to cupboard, extracting each plant that Osrith had asked for. As she handed them to her wrapped in a thin, linen cloth, Sula narrowed her eyes. I have not seen you. You never came here and I will deny having ever met you today. Understood, Osrith nodded. I, also. She accepted the medicinal herb bundle from Sula's fingers, tucking it away inside her clothing, before swallowing down the vile-tasting liquor. Tansy which, as before had, almost at once, caused Osrith's body to contract with more pain than she'd ever felt on a battlefield. Sula held Osrith's hand through the ordeal and, once over, would dispose of the body matter that she had passed in an appropriate ritual. You are not the first, you will not be the last, Sula commented, misinterpreting the relief on Osrith's face as embarrassment. And this is not your first abortion. Osrith said nothing as Sula had her sit back on a chair, knees up, while she packed her with steeped leaf mulch from the pot outside. Do not go near the prince again, Sula instructed, as she pushed the sterile plant matter deeply inside Osrith's cunt with nimble, careful fingers. For you have tangled fate twice with your choice to divert life in this world. Use your gift. My gift? Your strength. You are a warrior and you have skill. Many men fight but they are not skilled, and many lords have battle skill but are too weak to lift even a meat blade. Sula stood back, leaving Osrith to pull up her trousers. As she made to get up, Osrith groaned in pain. Sula looked at her, frowning. The caustic should not cause you so much pain, Sula mused. Caustic? Osrith questioned, as the burning sensation came again. Did the healer not show you last time? I was alone. Osrith spat, doubling over in pain. The passage of matter is over, but this stems the bleeding. You must have bled a good deal last time, then. I did, Osrith admitted. How long does this last? I will perform the ritual. Once it is over, you should feel no more discomfort. Osrith watched, pain irritating her insides, as she watched Sula place all that she had passed, the germ of hers and Constantine's child, still wrapped in the cloth, into a fire at the back door, throwing a white powder, then a darker one into the flames. The spirit is beyond. Now, Sula uttered, quietly. May I ask, she added, as, indeed, Osrith's pain was subsided, the last? Osrith closed her eyes as images of the green sea, of her attackers, of the pain and its easing in the salt water. I swam in the sea, until it was all over. She watched Sula sigh. Then its spirit will roam. Something unresolved, from that time, that place, will be with you until. Until. Prompted Osrith. But Sula said no more, apart from instructing Osrith to remove the leaves after 2 days. And, Osrith strode shortly afterwards, the land still covered in fog, as strongly as she was able, to her landing point from the Caldes ferry before crossing to the Dunnottar fortress, with Sula's parting words in her ears, you will not bear a child again. As the sun broke through the cloud, its rays lighting up the fortress, Osrith found she was pleased to know that. Should she give in to humping, she would never again be conflicted between child or lord. And, the tiny voice, which had been burrowing at the back of Osrith's mind, said again, If not with tagged, with nobody.